9th, 2011. This is Deb Moore of the Veterans History Project for Grand Valley State University. I'm speaking with Lamar Bloss at his home at the Grand Rapids Home for Veterans. Thank you for speaking with me today, Lamar. Let's talk a little bit first about when and where you were born in your early life.
I was born in Vistula, Indiana, at home.
Okay.
And my mother had tuberculosis. So I had to go live with my dad's brother for 4 years. And then they wanted to adopt me, so I couldn't stay there no more. So I went to my mother's grandmother.
Okay.
And she raised me until I was 5, and then I got to go home.
Wow. Wow. How many children did your mom and dad have?
Well, before the Depression, they had 2. Then Depression come along, they didn't have any more. And after Depression was over, they had another boy and girl.
Okay. So there were 4 of you all
Yeah,
together.
4 of us all together.
So your mother you recovered from the TB.
Yeah.
Okay. And that was just how did that happen? How did she recover?
Well, she didn't go to a sanitary. She done it at home. That's the reason we couldn't stay there. And all we got to do is go every Sunday. We got to go for 2 hours
And visit.
to visit.
Was that a sad time for you?
What?
Was it a sad time for you, or did you like living at your uncle's?
Oh, I was all right. But I didn't have any choice, on
Right.
where I was going to go or anything. But that's someplace that my dad could keep me.
Yeah, where you'd be safe. And what did your dad do for a living?
He worked on the railroad.
Okay. And so then you said you went and lived with your grandmother,
Yeah,
your maternal grandmother. And what was that like?
that was fine. I enjoyed it there.
Any other
But-
kids?
What?
Were there any other kids there?
No,
No.
my sister was there.
Okay, you and your sister.
Yeah.
And so where did you go to school?
I went to school in a one-room school there in Vistula. And after that, I went to Bristol to high school.
To high school, okay. Okay, did you finish high school?
Yeah.
Were you a good student?
Fair.
Uh-huh.
I was good at certain things.
Yeah, what was that?
That was good, and it wasn't math, but it was. They said I would make a good, figures, and
You were good at math?
yeah.
Okay.
And they give me a book where I was supposed to fill out, and make a whole. I had to make a whole. They give you all the. It was a bookkeep.
Okay, bookkeeping,
Yeah,
okay.
and they had a whole bunch,
Like ledgers?
Yeah, then you had to figure out what the balance was at the end of the year. Well, the teacher gave me mine, and I filled mine out in 6 months. And all the kids that were real smart, they said, "How did you do that?" I said, "Well, it wasn't hard for me." And so she said, "Well, we got to do something with you, so we'll put you in typing." So then I typed for the last 6 months.
Okay. And what kind of other, were you involved in any other activities when you were in high school? Any sports or clubs?
I wasn't in any clubs, but I ran track.
Okay.
That's what I done more than anything else.
Did you like that?
Yeah, because I could do that at home too, And I enjoyed that.
So were you in pretty good shape?
Yeah.
So you graduated from high school. Had you thought then what you were going to do for a living?
I had no idea.
Okay. And then the war was going on.
Yeah.
Okay. And then tell the story about how you came to be drafted.
Well, I had been married for the 3 years.
Oh, tell me again. You got married when you were 16?
Yeah.
But when you were still in high school?
No.
No.
I had graduated.
Okay.
And how I came to work where I did, my brother-in-law worked at a paper mill.
Mm-hmm.
So that's where I went to work. And I went to work there after I finished my service. But one day they called me in the office and they said, well, we can't pay you what you should. So we have another job for you. And so everything was set up, you know. And I went to Miles Laboratories and they make Alka-Seltzer. Well, I didn't work there. I worked in a new program, and what we started, we made corn syrup out of citric acid. We made citric acid out of corn syrup, which wasn't done. That was never done.
Mm-hmm.
So that's where I worked,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and I enjoyed that a lot because what you done, you know, it was good, or you felt good about what you done.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
And then they made me a chemist for what they wanted me to do. I wasn't a full chemist. All I done was what they wanted me to do, and that's all they trained me to do.
Right.
And so I worked there for about 18 years, and then they closed the plant down and just tore everything out.
Wow.
Nothing there. And they wanted me to go wherever they sold it to.
Uh-huh.
And I says, no, I'm too set in my ways. I'm not going to go.
Mm-hmm.
And so I didn't go.
Mm-hmm.
And I stayed at Miles for a while. Then after they closed the plant down, I didn't go with them because when you worked with that acid, it ate the lining right out of my stoves. So I got out of that completely, you know.
Uh-huh.
And I worked there for 15 years. And then after that, I started working for the city.
Okay.
And
What city was that?
Elkhart.
Elkhart.
Elkhart,
Okay,
Indiana.
Uh-huh.
And I went to work there. And they said they wanted me to start working on something where what they send to the river would be within specs. You know what I mean?
Mm-mm.
That you can only run so much of the river.
Okay.
You know.
Uh-huh.
And they were running more. Everybody along the lake was running a lot more in and polluting than they were supposed to.
Okay.
And we were one of them that was doing it too.
Uh-huh.
And I said, well, the simple way is to build some more tanks out there.
Mm-hmm.
They just had the one, and then they didn't have any other. Mm-hmm. So when that tank filled up, it went over to the river.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, what you got to do is you put in 3 more tanks.
Mm-hmm.
I said, that's the cheapest way you can do it. And when that first one gets full, instead of overflowing to the river, you put it in a tank.
Mm-hmm.
And you got 3 tanks that you can fill. But when it's slow, you put some of it back in the river.
Mm-hmm.
And we were the first ones on the state that was
Great.
within that.
Great.
South Bend spent millions on stuff, and they never did get it spent.
Wow.
And it was the simplest thing it was.
Right.
And they tried to make something big out of it, you know.
Right,
And it wasn't big at all.
Yeah,
It was
yeah.
just common sense.
Tell me, Lamar, what was your wife's name?
Betty,
And did you meet Betty in high school?
no, she worked at a restaurant where my cousin worked.
Uh-huh.
And she asked him if she knew who I was.
Uh-huh.
And she said, yeah, he's my cousin. She said, well, that's the man I'm going to marry. And so that's what I did.
And you were only 16
Yeah,
when you got married.
yeah.
Then did you
well,
have...
everybody was getting married young then.
Yeah. Did you have any children right away?
No, after I got out of service is when we had our children.
Okay, good. So you were married not very long. How long were you married before you went into the service?
3 years.
Married 3 years,
Yeah.
then you went into the service.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I was in there 3 years.
Right. Okay, and so you had been married 6 years before you had any children.
Yeah.
Okay. So tell me where they sent you for basic training.
Fort Riley, Kansas.
Okay.
That's where I took all my
Okay.
basic training.
Okay. What do you remember of that time? Basic training.
Yeah, I took basic training.
What do you remember about it?
Well,
Was it difficult?
no, it wasn't difficult at all for me. But I was just about one of the oldest men there.
Were you?
Yeah, and that didn't bother me either.
Okay.
Because I fit right in, you know what I'm saying?
Uh-huh.
And it wasn't any stress on me, anything that I did, you know.
You think that's because of your cross-country training, or?
I think it was both.
Uh-huh. Both that and?
I just wanted to do something good.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And so then after basic training, did they train you for a specific job?
No, not a specific job, just go over there and do what you can.
Okay. So after basic training from Kansas, where did you go?
I went to the Army, over sea.
They sent you over
yeah,
to the Pacific.
I was home for Christmas, and New Year's I was on my way to Korea.
To Korea?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. And what was your job there to be?
Well, my first job was I was over there 4 days, and they told me, say, you pick out 5 men, and we want you to go up and take Baldy. But all you got is 5 men, because that's all we can give you.
Okay.
And so I picked out 5 that I knew pretty well in basic, you know what I mean?
Sure.
And some of them weren't. Some of them was one another company. But I picked out 5 that I thought would be good men.
Okay.
And I only had 4 days of training when you're supposed to have 2 weeks.
Uh-huh.
And that upset me because they chose me to do that, you know what I mean? And I
Sure.
thought, what's going on, you know?
Right.
And
What's the rush?
and so I picked out the men that I thought would be right.
Mm-hmm.
And that's when we started up the hill, ran out of mission, we had to come back down. But then, when we went back up, we took it. And after we took it, they turned right around and we walked off. And they done that 3 times. And I could never figure out what they were doing. I said, all they're doing is wasting men.
Right.
That's the way I felt. But
Because you
that's what
go
they-
up, capture the mountain,
Yeah.
and then retreat, and then the enemy would
Yeah.
come back up there
Yeah.
again.
And that's the way it was, 3 different times. And I could never figure out what they were doing.
Uh-huh. Did you dare ask your commanding officer? Or you just didn't do that?
No,
No.
they just turned us loose.
You just do what you're told.
Yeah,
And did you lose men that way?
oh, some, but very few.
Mm-hmm.
The 2 other officers were taking their parts of it too.
Mm-hmm.
And they had a lot more casualties than I did.
Mm-hmm.
For the simple reason, I didn't ask anybody to do anything that I wouldn't do.
Mm-hmm.
So I went right up with them.
Mm-hmm.
The others stood at the back and barked orders.
Mm-hmm.
And they had more orders they had more casualties than I did.
Right. So even though you were a private, you were put in a position of leadership?
Yes.
Huh.
They told me I was doing first-class sergeant work all the time I was there.
Okay, but only getting paid as a private?
Yeah.
Okay, so that was the hill called Baldy.
Yeah.
And then tell me about Pork Chop Hill.
Pork Chop was a little bit smaller,
Uh-huh.
but they were all together.
Uh-huh.
And they were all above the 38th parallel.
Okay.
And just what they asked me to do, I just did it. And that was it. I didn't ask no question. I didn't have time. I just done what I felt I was supposed to do.
How many different groups do you think were going up Pork Chop Hill trying to capture it?
Well, they was probably, altogether, it was probably 4 or 5 different groups that started up
Uh-huh.
with us too.
Uh-huh.
We were one of them.
And still it's you and about 5 other guys
Yeah,
in your group?
yeah.
Uh-huh. And did you have hand-to-hand combat or?
A little.
Uh-huh.
Look at my face.
Oh.
Everything's crooked.
Oh, I thought you looked good. Is it crooked? What happened to you?
Well, it was more or less, that time was more or less hand-back column.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
And, well, that's what happened.
Did you sustain an injury?
I just kept going.
Okay. Okay.
I kept doing what I was supposed to do.
Uh-huh.
And I thought, well, I can still get around and I'm still capable of doing what I have to do.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So that's what I did.
Mm-hmm. Are there any factors in your background that you think made you well suited to be a soldier?
Not really.
No.
The only thing I used to do a lot of hunting.
Uh-huh.
After I got out of high school and stuff, I used to do a lot of hunting.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
So I wasn't afraid of guns.
Okay.
I wasn't afraid of any of the weapons.
Uh-huh. Okay.
And the mortar I knew was behind us,
Okay.
and they were going to fire over us,
Uh-huh.
but we had to make sure we stayed behind far enough that none of us got hit in the back.
I see. I see. Okay. Okay. So you were always cognizant of that. You were
Yeah.
always looking for that
Yeah.
as a. Okay. And then you said then the third hill was T-Bone Hill.
Yeah.
Okay. And how was that different than the others?
It was a little lower, but just as fast.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It was just as fast as the others were.
Okay.
And then the next hole was just a little bit shorter. They just 1, 1, 1.
Okay.
That's the way they were.
And so then the Americans were in control of those
Yeah.
3 hills.
Yeah.
And then what happened after that? How did that really fit into the big picture of the strategy?
Well, 2nd Division, they was up on the line, and they got in trouble so much that they took them back, and all they done was guard prison.
Mm-hmm.
And I got there right when they was going back up on line. That's the reason I had to do what I had to do.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay, so then did you have to, how long a period of time are you talking about with these Baldy, Pork Chop Hill, and T-Bone?
Probably the first year and a half that I was there.
It took that long
Yeah.
to capture
Yeah.
and keep those
Yeah.
3 hills?
Yeah.
Wow.
Why they didn't keep them?
Mm-hmm.
I could never figure that out.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
I could never figure out what was the reason that they would do something like that. You
Yeah.
know?
Yeah. Huh.
And I said, well, it seemed to me like it's just a wasting of men.
Yeah. Why don't you describe a typical day for me, Lamar? What would that be?
Well, a couple of the days it was really tough
Uh-huh.
because they came after us and we weren't expecting.
Mm-hmm.
And we all made it, or just about part of it, but I was glad that we did.
Mm-hmm.
So we done what we had to do.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Everyone done their part.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh. And what would you eat when you were out on these missions?
We get back down and we always had K ration.
Mm-hmm.
And just like, just about like K ration.
Okay.
And they didn't have an open mess for us while we was up there.
Okay.
And after we come down, and they was pretty well situated, then they brought us a mess cup. And then we ate off the mess cup.
Okay. So that was better food.
Yeah.
What was the K ration? Describe what was in that.
In the K ration?
Mm-hmm.
Well, we had potatoes, and they had some eggs, and usually the vegetable was fresh.
Okay.
But the eggs were powdered eggs, and they're using them today to get rid of them since T-War, Second World War. That's what the boy said. And the potatoes too.
They had so many.
And they're still using them. And if you
Okay.
don't believe it, look at them out here. And what are they?
Seems like it, huh? So
Yeah.
tell me about, were any of the guys in your little group ever frightened, or tell me about that, about.
Well, 3 of them was killed, and there was a couple of them wounded,
Uh-huh.
and that's what we lost.
Okay.
And I hated it that we done that,
Yeah.
but we done everything we could to keep everybody as safe as we could.
Right. It sounds like
And
it.
we done a lot better than the ones down lower.
You feel like you had low
Yeah.
casualties for what
Yeah.
you were doing.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. 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 Were you scared every day when you got up to go do that?
No, I was never frightened.
Uh-huh.
And I don't know why.
Okay.
I should have been, but, well, do what you gotta do and get the hell out of it.
Right.
Is the way I felt.
Right. Do you think a lot of people in your little group prayed?
I'm sure they did.
Uh-huh.
But the biggest share of us, they made a minister down below, and we all took communion before we went up.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I insisted to that, and I think that helped us a lot.
Uh-huh. 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 So you had a chaplain.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I figure it's not going to hurt us.
Right. Right.
And I really believe it will do some good.
Yeah. Yeah. Great. Great. So did you ever, in 3 years, Lamar, get any R&R time, or did you get to come home, or?
I got ENR, and I went to China for 2 weeks.
Okay.
And there I stayed at the British Embassy.
Uh-huh.
And that's where I stayed.
British Embassy.
Yeah. And
in
that's
China.
where I stayed
Uh-huh.
when I went back over to Korea.
Okay. Did you get to see your wife at all in those 3 years?
Did I what?
Get to see your wife?
No.
Not the
I did.
three?
I did during basic training.
Uh-huh.
She'd come down every 2 weeks.
Okay.
And that's after that. And I left. That was it.
Wow.
And I didn't see her anymore.
Did you write a lot?
Oh yeah, we wrote letters back and forth. And that's how we kept in touch.
Okay. Okay. And what did she do while you were gone? Did she live by herself, or?
No, she lived with her mother and dad.
Okay.
She moved up with her dad.
Yeah. 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 I think that was pretty common then, huh?
Yeah.
Did you have any free time? Did you guys play cards or drink beer, or?
No, we didn't have any time for any of that.
No.
We had actually no recreation whatsoever.
No.
If you go back when you come back off the line, they give you so much time off the line.
Okay.
But there was nothing where you really enjoyed yourself. It was all discussing what was going on.
Okay.
And that was our free time.
Right. Or probably sleeping or resting.
But after this was all done, they put me in a regular group and what I was supposed to do. And I was in Graves Registration.
Graves?
Registration.
Meaning?
What? I go up and pick up the bodies.
Really? Wow.
It wasn't a good job.
No.
And I had no friends. I go in the mess hall, the table would be full, all but one seat. I go there and sit down, everybody would leave.
Because what were they blaming you for?
Well, I was Mr. Dead. That's what they called me.
Wow.
And I had no friends. They say, well, you go to the Army, that's where you meet your friends. I didn't meet nobody, because nobody wanted anything to do with me.
Oh, my word. So you were ostracized.
Mm-hmm.
How did that make you feel?
Well, it hurt me at first, and I thought, well, it's what they put me in. I got to do the job, and I got to do it the best of my position and forget about everything else. So that's what I did.
I thought that was a job that was like for the medical corps or something.
I wish it would have been medical.
Yeah, but it was.
But I didn't pick up any medical in them.
So you went up. Were you working with somebody else?
Oh yeah.
A bunch of you.
Yeah.
And tell me.
But I'm the one that handled the dead and bring them down.
Okay.
And they had their line and they kept it going.
How did you bring them down?
We had a regular truck.
So in body bags
yeah.
or stretchers or what?
Yeah, they put in those, and when they got down, we had a morgue.
Uh-huh.
And nobody could get in the morgue unless me.
Okay.
I was the only one that could go in.
Uh-huh.
And it was very hard to me because I had to take all their personal effects off of them and put them in a little bag.
Okay.
And hang it on the right side up by their head. And that was the hardest thing that I ever had to do, is take the stuff off the body. That hurt me. I I think the one I remember most of, I never knew his name, I never wanted to. He had a check for something like $37,000. His parents died while he was in service, and they sent a check to have him endorse it. And I had to send that back and be awful careless that nobody would take it, you know.
Yeah, that was nerve-wracking. So then, Lamar, was it somebody else's job then to notify the families?
No, that wasn't my job.
That wasn't your job?
No.
And so once you got them to the morgue and you put their effects in the bags, then that part of, you were done with
then
that?
I was done with them.
Okay,
And they picked them up and took them back
okay.
in a regular, well, it was a regular truck that
Yeah.
army truck, you know what I mean?
Right.
With the army signature, the dead signature on it, you know what I'm talking about?
Right. Wow, and why do you think they picked you for that job?
What?
Why did they pick you for that job?
I don't know. We just got done in Baldy and they said, now here you go, this is gonna be your regular job.
Yeah,
So I went.
yeah.
And
How long do you think you did that job?
What?
How long do you think you did that job, the grave registration?
Oh, I done that job for a little over a year.
Wow.
Not much.
Okay,
And then they decided they didn't need me anymore. So they sent me to the 2nd Division.
okay,
So I went to the 3rd Division, and I was there for about a couple months. And they didn't know what to do with me.
mm-hmm,
They didn't know what the heck they were going to do with me. So they decided they was going to put me in the, they was going to start a store up there, you know what I mean? Well, where they could buy stuff.
okay. Like cigarettes and
Yeah,
beer and pop
yeah,
and,
they
okay.
could buy all that
Uh-huh,
there in the store,
Okay.
you know. And it got where I took 3 big trucks to Seoul and picked up every watch set I could get, every camera, and anything like that you could pick up. And I took it all up online. There was no other one up online. And, well, everybody had money, but nobody had a room to spend.
right,
And so when I was up there, that gave them a place where they could spend their money
Uh-huh.
on what they want.
Uh-huh.
But we never tried to make any money off of them.
right.
But we just tried to get back what we
And
put
have,
in,
and
you know
have
what I
some
mean?
items
Yeah.
available.
And that's what I done for the rest of the time I was over there.
Uh-huh,
And it was about the last 8 months.
Did you enjoy that job?
Yeah, I enjoyed that.
Uh-huh. Then you were
And-
more popular?
Yeah, I met one guy from Florida. He was an Indian.
Uh-huh.
And his name was Wiley Brookshire.
Uh-huh,
And he was with us. I was there first, and then they brought him in. But I still done more than what my job called for, you know,
Uh-huh.
because it still was first class plea.
sure.
And I done all first class work all the time I was overseas.
Uh-huh,
And the officers, when I got back home, told me that.
uh-huh,
And so that's how I knew that, you know what I'm
Yeah.
saying?
yeah,
But while Brookshire, now if you listen to the radio or anything else, one of the ball players is Wire Brookshire
really?
to this day.
Uh-huh,
What they done, their dad died and their mother was there. And she couldn't handle it, so the 2 boys that were home helped her run it.
uh-huh,
And when Wiley got home, he was the oldest one, and they ended up, and even today, they own the biggest unit is grocery stores
okay,
all over Texas.
wow,
They cover the whole area.
wow,
And Wiley says, why don't you come with me? He says, I wouldn't be afraid to you running it, and I think you could do it. the breakdowns of all the stores, you know what I mean?
Sure.
And he said, I'm sure, I know what you're going to do. And he said, I wouldn't be afraid to let you handle it.
Right.
The biggest one is where you could drive in the building, you know, with the semis. And the biggest was you could drive 27 trucks in there.
Uh-huh.
And he wanted me to do that, and I said, no, I can't do that. That's too much for me.
Uh-huh.
And so I didn't do it, and I just come back home.
Did you regret that?
What?
Did you regret your decision?
I wish sometimes that I would have went down.
Uh-huh.
It would have given me a lot different
Yeah. Yeah. A different life.
life
Yeah.
than what I had.
Yeah. Yeah. What were your impressions of Korea when you were there?
Well, the people that I met, I thought were educated more than when I stopped off in China, not China. Oh, you know,
Seoul?
yeah.
Uh-huh.
And I thought they were more high than some of the other countries around there.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, I know that China is the one that wanted them,
Mm-hmm.
but so did where they dropped the atom bomb.
Japan.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And they wanted to do away with Korea
Mm-hmm.
because they wanted the women as prostitutes and they wanted the men to do all the dirty work that nobody wanted.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought that was ridiculous,
Mm-hmm.
that someone would want to do that to them.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And there wasn't anything I could do about it, you know what I mean?
Mhm.
But I just told them I thought that that was wrong and we should never not back them.
Mm-hmm.
And that's still the day that I feel.
So you felt like the South Korean people were appreciative of the Americans'
What
involvement?
it was is if they would have drew the line clear up where the Chinese could come down in to
Korea.
Korea, if they would put that line right up where the Chinese were, right at this, all the way across, and keep it that way, and make them keep themselves home, or you keep yourself home, and any place in between those two, you took the chance of getting shot,
Mm-hmm.
and make it there, and keep that all in one.
Mm-hmm.
Well, they decided they didn't want to do that,
Mm-hmm.
and I think they were foolish for not doing it.
Mm-hmm.
Because you wouldn't have the friction between the north and south.
Yeah, made that line farther
Yeah.
north.
And I think that should have put right where the Koreans come down.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it would have been a lot better if that's where it would be.
Mm-hmm.
Because you wouldn't have the one part so thick with people and the other so scarce. You know, I think it would go all over.
Right.
And then I think if they got too much that they couldn't handle it, I think they should have sent some of those jobs, you know, that didn't mean much, send them over across the line.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, see, the fingers are down here, and then they had a circle right around there where there was a lot of people,
Mm-hmm.
and they would have had the people to start these companies up there.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that would have been a lot better off,
Yeah.
because they would see what we could do, and there was enough of them that they would start spreading, you
Mm-hmm.
know. And I thought they could take the whole damn country if they do it right.
Mm-hmm.
And I still think that.
Anything else that you think we should discuss about your time in the military?
Well,
Anything we've missed that was important?
I felt that I done something decent,
Uh-huh.
and I done what I had to do. It wasn't what I liked to do, but it was what I was made to do.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what I felt that I did.
Do you remember the day you got your discharge papers or the day you knew you were going home?
No, I don't.
Do you know how you got home?
Yeah, I come home by boat.
By boat.
Mm-hmm.
Ship into
Washington State.
Washington State.
Yeah.
Then what?
And then I went to Chicago
On a train?
to the hospital there.
What did you go to the hospital for?
Mainly, I went swimming when I was there, and I had something in my ear, and it hurt and stuff, and that's what they were trying to get rid of.
Okay. And what did that turn out to be?
I call it bug.
It was a bug?
It's something like that in your ear, and
Like a physical bug or a
yeah,
germ?
that's what I figured it was.
Uh-huh.
And my own doctor, he took the scrapings out of them, and he grew serious with it.
Uh-huh.
And then he gave me shots with that, and that's how I got over it.
Okay. So it's some kind of a parasite?
Yeah,
Or
something I don't know what it was.
Well, it was. Okay. So then you took the train from Washington to Chicago,
Yeah.
saw the doctor, then another train home to Indiana.
Yeah,
Okay. You resumed your life with your wife. Then did you have a couple of children, you said?
yeah. I was, 3.5 months, and our first daughter was born.
What was her name?
And then 3 months later, our son was born.
3 years later.
Yeah.
Yeah.
First one.
So you had a son and a daughter. I mean, a
Yeah.
daughter and then a son.
Yeah, and then after that, my wife had 2 sons that weren't mine.
Oh. Okay. And did you know that at the time?
Yeah, and she had a boyfriend all her life. So my life wasn't prejudiced. It was very, very happy. And
You found out about that, Lamar, when you got back from the service? Or you knew when you were in the service that she had a boyfriend?
no, I knew that before I went.
Before you went. But you stayed married to her anyway.
Yeah, till she died just a year ago. I told her, anytime you want a divorce, you just go file for it. Well, she didn't want to because she figured she'd lose some money. And she never would file it for it. I would never give it to her. But I told her I would give it to you any day that you wanted.
But you weren't going to instigate it, you mean?
Yeah, I wasn't going to do anything. It was up to her.
Mm-hmm.
And she would never do it, so we stayed married. I just left it go, and I done what I had to do, and just ignore her.
Did you raise those 2 boys as your own?
Yeah, I raised all 4 of them as my own.
And those boys know that today, that
Oh,
you're
yeah.
not their father?
Uh-huh.
Wow.
I have doubts about, well, my first son was mine, I know that. And he's dead. He died when he was 58 years old.
Aw.
48 years
48.
old. And
And your daughter?
my daughter was fine, and she still treats me. She is her real fine. Probably not her biographer, but her dog. I was her dog. She was my daughter,
Right.
and I didn't think she was my biological child, you know.
Uh-huh.
And I don't think, the only one that I think is the one that is dead.
And what makes you think that? Something about their their looks, their appearance, their
The way I was treated.
by them or
Yeah.
by your wife?
No, by them. The 2 boys didn't want nothing to do with me.
Mm-hmm.
And my one son is working here in the same unit I'm in, and nobody will believe me. And that's fine, I know. But when he first came in, he used my first name. I never told him anything he wouldn't mention here. But I said, how did you know what my name was? and he never would tell me.
Okay.
But he's still working
But
in this unit.
what was the name of your son, though, that died at 48?
Well, my wife, well, he loved her dearly, but if he knew what she had done to him, he wouldn't have cared a damn about her. And what I mean by that, she tried to have an abortion, but he was too far along and it didn't work.
Uh-huh.
But it hurt him terribly because when he was 3 years old, he had to have this operation that the old men have, you know.
Prostrate surgery?
Yeah, and he was 3 years old
Wow.
when he had to do that.
Uh-huh.
And his whole life was his family.
Uh-huh.
And before he died, about 2 years before he died, both of those boys told him that they weren't his brother. And I think that's one reason he had died.
Boy.
Because his life was his family.
Yeah.
But he turned out, even though this all happened, he was still just as smart as all the rest of them.
Uh-huh.
Because his first job, he went to work for a shoe store. And the people were old and they were ready to close down, and they wanted him to take over the shoe store.
Uh-huh.
All he would have to do was pay for the inventory,
Uh-huh.
and the business would be his. Well, he was still in high school, and he thought it'd just be too much
Mm-hmm.
for him, you know what I mean?
Sure.
And so, after that, he went to work for, not Penny's, but one of the others, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And there, he was in the shoe department.
Mm-hmm.
And he had to order at one time or other, he had to order for the whole sizes. He ordered, a lot of times he had to order 1,000 different size, all the same size or style, but you know
Different
what I'm
pairs,
talking about.
different sizes and
Yeah.
colors. Sure.
And after that, they wasn't paying him hardly anything. And he thought, well, why should I do all this work?
Mm-hmm.
And so he went to a store that was wallpaper to go.
Oh, yeah.
And he'd go out and do a lot of the wallpaper.
Mm-hmm.
And that helped him. They paid him good, but that helped him a lot too.
Get some more. Yeah.
Yeah. So after that, he got his own apartment then, and he always was on the loan. And he lived in Indiana. I can't think what the name of the town was, but it's down there. And there, in his apartment complex, there was an old lady, and she had a tavern, but she couldn't make any money at it. So my son says, well, I think I can make some money at it for you. So he went out and worked and done what he had to do, and he made her quite a bit of money.
Uh-huh.
Well, she left everything to her sister, but her sister was supposed to give him half of it.
Uh-huh.
Well, he never got nothing.
Sure. Sure.
That's the way it was.
Yeah.
And then after that, he was off about 2 years. And then after that, he got a job for, all these, Hallmark and all them went
Okay.
together.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Well, then they hired him, and they wouldn't give him a department. And that scared him all the more, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And they called him in one day, and then he said, well, we have a special job we want you to do. And so he said, I'll do my best. And so he said, well, we'll give you a car, and every new store in Michigan, every you start in Ohio, every one you start in Indiana and Texas, and Illinois, not in Chicago, but outside of Chicago. Every one we build, we want you to go and take the inventory.
Mm-hmm.
So that's all he did in his last life, is he went around and took their inventory. Every one, they never, so the ones that run the store, they done the inventory 4 or 5 times and they wouldn't accept it.
Okay.
And they never refused him on the first inventory.
Wow. Lamar, let's get back to you. Did you ever use the GI Bill when you left the service?
I did a little.
Uh-huh.
There was a college in Elkhart that was just, they would train you for what you wanted to do.
Uh-huh.
Well, I wanted to be a male nurse, but I couldn't draw blood.
Okay.
So that fixed me right there.
Oh, darn.
But they still, I was a X-ray technician.
Okay.
And I graduated from that, but I figured I could make more money other than that.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's what I did.
And
That's how is what all that I took.
Yeah. And you mentioned something to me before we started the interview about the tendons in your hand, by your thumb. Tell me about that.
I don't know how I done it, but here it is. It got the scar, and it was just about halfway around, and
That was when you were in the service?
yeah, and
Like a cut?
yeah, it was all the way around, and I don't know how I done it.
And where did they operate on your hand?
When I got back to Washington State,
Okay.
that's the first time they even looked at it.
Okay.
And then they said, well, we're going to have to put your sew your tendons back together so you have use of your thumb. So that's what they did.
So that was pretty successful.
Yeah,
Uh-huh. Uh-huh. And that's before they discharged you?
yeah.
Okay. Okay. Do you feel like you have any lasting effects of the war?
Yeah, I have a lot of PSD.
Do you?
Yeah.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh. And how does
But
that...
I go over here to the psychiatrist. He's one of the best there is.
Is he?
And I go to him
Uh-huh.
right as a study patient.
Okay.
And I'm the oldest one that he ever had go through his unit.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh. And so it helps for you. Do you does he have you talk about it, or?
Oh,
what
yeah.
is- uh-huh.
That's what it is, to get it out of my
Get
system.
it out of your system, and that helps.
All the things that happened to me.
Yeah, yeah, that's great. So how long have you lived here at the Grand Rapids Home for Veterans?
20 years.
20 years.
Yeah.
So you're 85. You came in when you were 65.
I was 92 years old when not my son, but my wife's son put me in here. And the reason she put me in here is the money.
Uh-huh.
And she's still getting it.
I thought, but she died a year ago?
No, my wife did.
Yeah.
But her daughter-in-law is the one that put me in here.
Oh.
So the 2 sons, the one son works here, but nobody will believe me. But he's the one that knew my name,
Uh-huh.
but nobody will believe it because he said, well, he lived just 4 blocks from here. 4 miles would have been right, but he says 4 blocks.
I thought he was in Indiana.
Huh?
I thought he lived in Indiana.
He did. He used to.
Okay.
But
Okay.
they moved to Michigan. They built their son a new home at the lake, and they built them. I haven't seen it, but they built their own a new home at the lake.
Okay. Did you join any veterans groups when you left the service?
No, I just tried to forget everything.
Okay. And you worked all those years. You retired at 65. You came to live here, and you've been getting the counseling from the
Mhm.
psychiatrist. Any other services you get here at the Veterans Home?
Did I get what?
Any other services?
No.
No. But they're good with any medical problems you
Oh,
have?
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I still feel that I'm capable of being out on my own.
Uh-huh.
And I would like to do that.
Yeah. Yeah. But this son that's not your son thinks that it's cheaper for you to live here? And he's in charge of your money?
They wanted me to live here.
Uh-huh.
Because they left me out, and it was 1 week when I had the apartment. But I had it in the same unit that my son lived in.
Uh-huh.
And after he died, well, it's when I went to live there.
Uh-huh.
And I was there 1 week, and the cops came. And my son had a speeding ticket that wasn't paid.
Mm-hmm.
And they thought I was him because it was still in the same unit.
Mm-hmm.
And they thought I was his, so they left it in the mailbox and said, "We want you to pay your speeding ticket." Well, I didn't have a speeding ticket, you know.
Right.
And that upset me terrible.
Yeah.
So I said, well, let me find another unit, you know what I mean, that
Sure.
I can go to. And no, you're going back up there. So here's where I came. But
When
they
you-
never give me a chance. And now, supposed to be my guardian, she is guardian for those boys. And if you ask anybody up there in that office, and she'll tell them, she was not your guardian. She was those boys' guardian.
Yeah.
Because that's where the money was.
Yeah. Well, let's wrap up here, Lamar. And you look over your whole military experience, your 3 years in the military. Do you think you had more positives, more negatives?
I think it was positive.
Uh-huh. How do you think it shaped your life?
Well, it made me a lot different than I was, you know,
Mm-hmm.
because I was just a young farmer boy, is what you could say.
Sure.
But it made me grow up a lot.
Uh-huh.
And I enjoyed what it was, other than my wife.
Uh-huh.
But I should have divorced her, that's what I should have.
Yeah.
Because they was bound determined I was going to stay in service.
Yeah.
He says, "We want you to stay in." And I said, "Well, I said, "You never give me any rank. What do you want?" "Well, you just come in. We will not make you a second lieutenant for unless a year, you'll be moved up."
Uh-huh.
And I said, "Well, how can you do that?" They says, "You have done enough for what you were supposed to do that we think you can move up, and you'll move up fast." And I said, "Well, what did I do?" And they said, "You got 3 Bronze Stars, military service, you know what I mean, and you were probably one of the most decorated men there."
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And the Bronze Stars is the second highest medal the Army gives. The Purple Heart's the first, and the Bronze Stars is the second one.
Mm-hmm.
And I got 3.
Okay. Great.
And that's why they decided I should stay in.
Yeah.
But I wish I would have,
Uh-huh.
but I didn't.
Okay. Yeah. Well, thanks for talking to me, Lamar, today. I appreciate it.
Thanks a lot.